So I'm Patricia from Luminare Press, and I'm here today with RaShonne Darling, one of our authors, who has written a book called The Curl Girls. And this is an adorable book about the magic of curly hair. And I'm going to try and show it to you here. The Curl Girls. This is just an adorable book, and I encourage any of you with children or grandchildren to go out and get a copy. I've read it to my granddaughter, and she appreciated it. I think she's about the same age as Olivia.
Thank you.
But I've invited RaShonne here today because she and her daughter, Olivia, who's 5, were featured on Fox 5 San Diego, and I was very curious about how that came about. We saw the video here at Luminare Press. We posted it on our social media sites, and I'll post a link for it again with this video, so there should be a link below. But before we jump into how that came about, RaShonne, can you tell us a little bit about the book and why you wrote it?
Absolutely. So the book is about 4 curly-haired superheroes, and their powers are based on their curl patterns. And I wrote the book because my little one, she was complaining about her curly hair, and I wanted her to know that her hair was magical. I see a lot of books that show hair appreciation or diversity appreciation, but it's always, A is for awesome, or it's, I should just love my curly hair. But kids don't necessarily connect with that as much as we think they do. They like the pictures, but what the words are doesn't really resonate. So for this, I wanted to make sure there was a story, because kids love stories, they love magic, and they love superheroes. And so I figured it was just a happy marriage of all those things. And it's been quite successful, at least from an exposure standpoint. I'd like to make some more money on it, but from exposure, it's definitely been quite a hit.
That's fantastic. Well, it was a thrill to see both you and Olivia being interviewed. Can you tell me how that came about?
So what I decided to do when I wrote the book was do a lot of fairs, community fairs, and a lot of markets around our community here in San Diego. And one of them was a very small one. It was like at a church, so a lot of people didn't know about it. It was probably mostly church members. I didn't go to the church. Someone approached me about it, and I said, okay, I'll do this. So one of the things that I made sure that I did was connect with our community. It's really easy to try to sell a book, but it's harder to make a connection with people. I do have a background in sales and marketing in my corporate life, so I have a little bit of knowledge on how to sell something to someone. But anyone that stopped by the booth, it wasn't, hey, you should buy my book. It was like, tell me about yourself. Tell me about the things that you do. So one of the women, her daughter actually worked for Fox, and we connected, and she was just so happy that I took the time to talk to her because she had her own booth, and that I took the time to find out about her. And she's like, I want to pass your information on to my daughter. And that was back in November. So I didn't really think much of it. I'm like, okay, sure, pass it on. And then I got a call from the producer at Fox 5 that said one of their colleagues had reached out and said I had a great book and a great story, and they wanted us to come on the show. And, oh, by the way, bring that 5-year-old.
That is fantastic. And I didn't know you were going to say that, but this is what I'm always telling people, is that it's not about buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. It's about making connections with people who are interested in your message as well as the book itself. And one of the things I love about this book, I love about any children's book, is that it's not just a story. It does have a very, I would say, pretty subtle message, because I think the superhero aspect is like the big wow. But there's also a message about being different and having different types of hair and respecting that. And I really think that that's a winning combination with a children's book, that you have the story's the thing that draws the kids in, but then they get exposed to the message. So when you went to these book fairs, how many did you go to? Are there a lot around San Diego, or?
Yes, we do have a lot. So we have fairs, like farmers market sort of fairs.
Oh, okay.
Every week and multiple days a week in different parts of San Diego. So there's one in where I live in Oceanside. We have one every Thursday. So another one of our new authors, Shannon Coe, she actually does that market every Thursday, right? So she's been really good. That's another person you should probably have on at some point because she's really been pushing her book. But she goes to a lot of those on Thursdays. But we have some in San Diego proper on Saturdays, Sundays, Mondays. Like every day, there's some sort of fair. And then when you're at these fairs, people will come up to you and they'll talk to you about all these different things that they're doing, or you'll talk to the other vendors and they're like, hey, I do this, but I also do this one. So you're just constantly making connections. I actually did an event for the United Way recently where they wanted me to come in and it was Read Across America. They wanted me to read my book because I had met a woman through another program I was in who worked for the United Way. And she's like, hey, come do this. So I read my book and the president of the United Way of San Diego was there. And she said, this is really great. I would love for you to come do a podcast for us for the United Way because we have a literacy podcast and we haven't had a children's book author. So it's literally every single touch point, there's a new opportunity. And you just have to be open to all these different opportunities.
That is really great. That's great to hear. Aside from in-person events, are there other things you do? Like, I'm curious, do you have like a website? Do you have a press kit? Like, how do you interact with these people once you've made that in-person connection?
I've been doing Instagram a lot. So I created a special Instagram account for the Curl Girls specifically. I've also created a pop-up shop, a virtual pop-up shop with merchandise through Printify. And it's really simple for you to do that. So we're getting merchandise out there, promo items out there. And so I'll interact with people there. Folks will reach out to me. And I'm really big on, I'll message anyone with curly hair with my book. And like, even if you don't have any children, it could resonate with you as an adult. You know, maybe you wish you had straight hair when you were younger and you finally embraced it and it's a great message. And I've had a lot of good reception based on just that. Like there's no press kit. I just keep going out. I'm just dripping. I guess it's more of a drip campaign.
And I really loved it that you included boys and girls. You know, the book focused on the curl girls, but you mentioned you had a curly boy and you mentioned boys in the book too. And I thought that was really nice because I'm the mother and grandmother of only girls. So I wouldn't have necessarily thought of that.
Surprisingly, I've had a lot of parents with boys reach out to me and they're like, our boys love this book. It was a little boy named Dylan. He's like, I think that character was me and she changed it to a girl. Like, so it's so funny. And I have a big network on LinkedIn as well. So the industry that I'm in is completely unrelated to what my children's book things are, right? So I work in financial services and I work with a lot of different insurance carriers and a lot of different peer groups, like different brokerage funds. And so I have this vast network and all of them will, I'll post something and they're all buying the book. I had one of them, she is on her library board out in New Jersey, and she got the book at the library there. So it's literally, I've been able to reach so many different areas. Someone texted me right before this call. There's an industry roundtable that we go to, and they're like, look what I found. So at this industry roundtable, they'll have a lot of business books that people can grab one, read it, share it, what have you. They have 3 Curl Girl books there. It's the only children's book.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So you're active on social media, mostly Instagram.
Yes.
Do you have a website?
I don't have one yet, so I'll point people back to my Luminare page, right?
Okay.
So I'll have that. My husband is in the middle of trying to create one for me. So if that's his forte, he knows how to do that stuff.
Oh, that's great.
So we'll have one, but it's really Instagram, LinkedIn, and then sometimes Facebook.
Okay. I wouldn't have guessed the LinkedIn for a children's book. So that's actually really great.
You've got a lot of parents that work, right? And they have kids.
Yeah, and that people in your industry are so supportive and interested too. That's fantastic. I think some authors try and really separate their author life from their work life. So I think it's really a great example of how you can mingle the two very successfully.
And they're unrelated enough where it's not some sort of conflict of interest. Like, no one's going to confuse my book with me giving financial advice.
Right. Right. That's fantastic. Okay. Well, what other advice would you give to authors, particularly, or maybe anything I didn't ask about, but for authors who are trying to promote a children's book in particular? You know, you did a beautiful job with production. You had a great illustrator. I really like the illustrations in the book. What advice would you give people who were trying to do that?
I would say the illustrations are 50%, honestly, of the success of that book.
Yeah.
I know some people look for shortcuts sometimes because it can be really costly. I know a lot of people think go through Fiverr. That's one of the best places, and you will get some cheaper illustrators, but a lot of them are using AI. They're not freehanding everything,
Yeah.
and that just drives me insane. I made it a point to go through an agency to find my illustrator to make sure they were vetted, and I paid a little bit of a premium for that, but I'm okay with it because I wanted to make sure that my book was representative of how important I thought it was. So it couldn't be just any old illustration. So I would say that's a really, really important step. And then obviously I found a great partner in Luminare. Right?
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Well, a year prior, I had been trying to figure out, well, how do I even do this? I know a lot of people go through KDP themselves, or they'll go through Ingram Spark, and I couldn't navigate that. And you all made the process so easy for me. When I looked a year prior, I didn't see you. Maybe I wasn't looking for the right thing. And when I was done with those illustrations, I said, well, let me see if there's some sort of publisher that I can work with. And you were the first ones that popped up, and you were so great. So I would say, make sure you have a good hybrid publisher. that's the second part of that. And then when you're doing your marketing, it sounds great. Like, oh, I've got the website, I've got this. But if you aren't putting in the work and you aren't doing the footwork, it's not going to happen. We don't have the luxury of a major publishing house to back us on this and to do all these things. So you have to get your feet wet. You have to pound that ground and get out there. It's summertime. This is the best opportunity to get involved in those fairs that start to happen across the country. I would start doing something like that. Go to bookstores. I reach out to bookstores, reaching out to cold calling and say, hey, I've got this great book. I have a little synopsis of what it is, who it's good for, and then I'll email that over to them. And I've been successful in getting my books in a couple of bookstores.
That's great. Yeah, that's fantastic. Have you done readings at bookstores or anything like that?
I have done one reading at a bookstore. Actually, Shannon invited me to a bookstore to do the reading, so that was pretty cool. And it wasn't a huge turnout per se, but there were two children there in the front row, two curly girls. I mean, I couldn't ask for more than that. I've also been going to schools
I wonder,
to read as well.
Did you go to Olivia's
even when
school?
I had my book launch, I went to Olivia's school, and her teacher loved it. So the librarian wants copies. And I'll try, even though I'm not making money, especially for these schools, I'll try to donate a book because it's at least one. And if the kids love it, maybe they'll go home and say, hey, I read this great book. Can you look for it, Mommy? So try to get word of mouth that way. So yeah, it's been a lot of that. And even for my book launch, there's an organization I'm a part of, and there are two of the mothers, their children go there, and they're on the board of that school. And so I was able to have the book launch at the school library where it's this beautiful location. And then the school invited people from the community. So it's not a school that's even in my neighborhood. So you got to branch out.
Yeah. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this. I'm really impressed with what you've done so far with marketing and very interested to see what you do in the future. That's really great. So thank you.
Well, the first draft of the second book is just about done. So.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Well, we'll look forward to seeing that when it comes along. But thank you very much. Thanks for being on, and thanks for your kind words about Luminare Press. I always appreciate that. I would say we're not the only publishing company out there that is legit and does a good job, but it's really important to find somebody who is legitimate, who you can work with. So thanks for mentioning that.
Thank you so much, Patricia, for this opportunity.